You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hello, this is Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, the Iron League 6 that makes it official. For over 16 years, 2,300 episodes of being the Chris Voss Show, 10 to 15 new shows a week. Be sure to always refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1, and the TikTokity and ChrisVossFacebook.com. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. We have an amazing young man on the show today. We're going to be talking with him about his experience and some of the things he's done in life and how he's helping other people, be better. So Kamran Loghman is CEO and inventor of pepper spray. He's a professor of business and Eastern philosophy and an expert in enlightened warriors philosophy and discipline. He's been an advisor to numerous VIPs and has also advised some of the most recognized global brands. And for more than a decade, he worked closely with Apple senior executives on various global projects. And we're going to be talking to him about his new venture in his podcast, Rise of Giants. Welcome to the show, Kamran. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Chris. Good to be with you here today.
Good to have you as well. Give us any .coms. Where do you want people to get to know you better?
Really simple. Rise of Giants with an S. riseofgiants.com.
There you go. So give us a 30,000 overview of what you do there.
I think the best way to do that is just kind of go back in time and see why it was developed in the first place so people can have better understand it. Since a young age, I was a very curious kid. Obviously, you can see Eastern philosophy, business, being consultant, all of that. It shows you that I'm kind of a 360-degree type person. I like to dive into different things and study. So as I'm doing that, as a young person, and I'm talking about I was 11 years old, I started both on the Japanese classical martial art, and that was just my own interest. But then eventually became academic. I mean, I started researching around the world, and I'm one of the leading experts in the migration of martial arts from South India in ancient time all the way to Japan and China. Wow. But then, I also was very much interested in philosophy of life. So I not only got my degrees in Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy, but really yoga. I mean, when I say yoga and meditation, I don't mean things you see on YouTube. I mean, I really spent time in India with some of the greatest experts that were out there. 50 years I've been involved with martial arts and, yoga and all this other thing. But why? Because I was always, since a young age, I was looking for kind of a manual in life. And everything I touched, that I would have given my own son. Everything I touched, was really great. No criticism. But it was not comprehensive. For example, yoga is great, in terms of, mind and body and health and everything else. But it doesn't talk about relationships, which is a huge part of human life. It doesn't talk about prosperity. I mean, putting bread on the table. We have so many, I don't have to preach this to people. People already know that. There's so many different aspects to a human life. It's complex. So how do we put our hand towards something? And the more I looked into this thing, and this is just, I want the audience to kind of visualize this. This is not something that happened overnight. The more I'm looking into this thing over the decades and decades of study, research, practice, and I want to bring practice into it because I practiced it too with the best of the best. I came to the conclusion that there is a theme that going across culture around the globe. It happens to be that some countries have documented it more than others. For example, India had documented it more than others. They were really good in documentation. That this theme is the theme of the warrior. And when I say warrior, I'm not talking about a brutal, violent person. We're talking about the epic warrior. And when I say epic warrior, I'm not talking about Vikings. Imagine, for example, I don't want people to get stuck in this example, but the heroic examples of Hercules, who has to go on a journey and overcome a lot of challenges. This concept in mythology is called heroic journey. And this, you find it around the globe, and it's about a hero. It's all metaphor, it's symbolism. A hero that goes on a journey to find what he's looking for, the truth. And in this way, he has to face challenges and obstacles and battles and overcome a lot of difficult things. And then as he just keeps going forward, eventually he comes to the end of his destination and he has to face all of his own evils. There's a two battle. One is an external battle, which is the battle of life, the things that are out there, adversaries, whatever, nature. Then there's an internal battle which is happening within the mind of the warrior. As he overcomes all of that, then eventually, again, this is a metaphor, this is a story across cultures, this person comes back to their village. Now they're completely transformed and they become a catalyst for other people to also to uplift other people and do better for them. This is not a light subject. It impacted a lot of people. In fact, George Lucas built the entire Star Wars on the heroic journey, being influenced by Professor of Mythology Joseph Campbell. And he had a lot of talks with Joseph Campbell regarding development of his movies. So the metaphor is there. Let me just say one quick little thing as I'm going through is that the warrior, they call him the enlightened warrior. That means their mind was enlightened. These people, ethical, they were, and I will explain a little more as we go forward. But these people were, the whole domain was not domain of men. I mean, you find throughout history, enlightened giants were female, and they were incredible. Then something else happens, and I want to again bring the people to. The more you study all the mythology, all the philosophies, all the things, I mean, from Japan to India to anywhere, all around the world, whatever, north, whatever. Every one of them are warriors. It doesn't make any sense. In fact, let me just bring something like yoga that everybody thinks is so passive, which it is. But the founder of yoga, Shiva himself in India, was a warrior. Why? Because life is challenging and you need to build that concept of warrior. Now, take this to modern world now. When it comes to leadership, to management, take it back to business, getting up on the wrong side of the bed every morning. The warrior has done that. And you may say, what does that mean to my life? The way they explain is this. You can either take the heroic journey, which is battle tested by these people for thousands of years, millennium, not decades or centuries, and then apply that roadmap so that you reduce liability of mistakes, or life will force you, there's no choice, into the journey of life, and the chances of mistakes and this and that and the other go on. So this is why I was looking for a comprehensive approach. And the more I look at it, I see the warriors are talking about savings. Believe it or not, I mean, some of the biggest bankers of all time were the Knights Templar. And, I mean, that's why they got killed by the King of France, because of their money. Wow. So the relationship is very important. Why? Because imagine a table, all right, with 4 legs. If one of the legs is missing, the table is going to fall off. So the way they look at it is that one leg is your mental fitness and physical fitness. They're not talking about health, fitness. The other leg is your prosperity. You have to have money to put it on the table. The other leg is your relationship. And the last one is your philosophy of life. When I say philosophy of life, they don't mean spirituality. They're not talking about God. And they're not against that. But they're talking about your purpose, your place. Why do you get up in the morning? All right? Yeah. So these 4 have to be together. Now, you can be very prosperous. That means one leg is very strong on the table. That's not the goal. The goal is balance of the table. You have to address all 4 of them. Let's take the example. You can be very rich, but have a very bad relationship. You're not doing good. You can have a great relationship and not have enough money. You're not doing very good. So all these 4 legs have to work. So this is why when I mean by comprehensive approach to life. So I sat down one day, going through my professional business and academic, and I've been doing this, researching all around the world, all of that. I said, you know what? I need to put this out there for people because, obviously we cannot go to deep subjects here today, but just let me put this out there for people because at least we have a template. We can start the conversation so that, and I've been a practitioner and researcher both, so people can come to it. And personally, and I'm going to stop here, let you jump in. Personally, I kind of felt an urge to do this. And I'm not doing it for money because I wanted to go money. And again, I've started so many businesses and sold businesses. I would do that. This is for really prosperity, is for my legacy. I want to put it out there. And the reason I got really urged to do this, to push this forward, I see so many things out there that is very hard for people on YouTube or this or that or social media to decipher from reality versus the other. 6,000 different versions of yoga. So I wanted to go to the authentic things and bring it to people and say, hey, listen, this is what it really is all about. So look at it and make your own decision and decide what you want to do with it and how it, and portion of this can help you. If you want to go deep into all of it, great. But if not, one part of it may completely rejuvenate you and take you to a different part and the section of your life that you need to go forward and propel you in that way.
Why isn't it, you talk about many things there, and, part of it, the hero's journey. I mean, that's something that men don't really talk about anymore because of a lot of reasons, but, and a lot of men are lost now. We're seeing that where they're not going to college, they're not starting families, they're having a hard time dating because of a lot of things. But part of what men go through is hero's journey. Women, when they're born and when they hit 20, I mean, the world loves them. For men, we're not loved until we can get to a point where we can contribute something to society, when we can contribute and make a family, and we build ourselves into something. I mean, that's why young men are sent off to the military, is because, sending them as fodder for war is about the only value they have. They don't have anything that can contribute to society. So they have to, they spend the next 10 to 20, 30 years building themselves into something. Men's peak in their value, what they can contribute, their earnings, and what they're valued for by women don't peak until about 50. And so having that hero's journey has been really important. It used to be that a lot of young men went to see movies because they featured men on their hero's journey, James Bond, you name any major role figure, and that's why men usually lead. Plus women want them to lead in masculinity, and they do a hero's journey, and it's always been celebrated up until recently. I don't think the movies really celebrate the hero's journey of men as much anymore in their woke contents of stuff. I'm an independent voter, used to be a Democrat up until recently. It's a thing we don't talk about and get back to. And a lot of men seem to have lost their purpose in life, their warrior sort of mentality. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I have a lot of thoughts about it. I'll come back to men in a second, but let's even talk about kids. Mm-hmm. How much suicide do you see among kids? Mm-hmm. It's because of the fact that the values, which are called the Code of Warriors, which are the way I teach them at U.S. Naval Academy, is the codes of living are not there. Let me just mention why I'm saying this in response to your discussion. PTSD did not exist among samurais because they had Bushido, the Code of Warriors. They practiced Zen meditation. And again, now U.S. military now is starting to, and also the English, they're looking into the meditation and mindfulness for, this kind of purpose. But I think it's extremely important to realize that to become a warrior is not just about brute force. Mm-hmm. It's not about strength. It's not about dominance. It's about it's an intrinsic things. Yes, you have to have a fit body. You have to have energy. In fact, we will discuss this, one of the gates, they call it, of the warrior is speed, agility, endurance, and all of that, vitality. But to be able to face life, whether our culture today is a man who's different from, I don't know, so many years ago or not, life will force us to face these things. Whether it's an illness, whether it's relationship, whether it's financial, whether it's a bad manager, whatever it is, you are going to have to be able to endure the problems and challenges of life. This is why throughout history, and this hasn't changed, becoming a leader is not a certificate because you took a 6-week course certificate in Ivy League school. Believe me, I've done this. I was in charge of executive education at a major business school. You become a leader because you're forged in the challenges of life. We have that in our Western culture here. The cowboys. You fall from the horse, you get back on the horse, and this is not unique to us. I mean, you have it among the Japanese warrior, Nana Korobi Aoki. You time 6 times down, 7 times up. So the philosophy of life has changed. Okay, you can dress however you want to dress. You can do whatever you want to do. That's nothing. But your inner spirit. I'm not talking about spirituality, ghost, or this, that. Your inner consciousness, your inner spirit has to be built and developed for the heroic journey to face things in life. And you have to do that. Whether you are married, as you said, you want to provide, or whether you're not and you don't have children, you want to provide for yourself. the heroic journey is unavoidable. You either start it now, or at the age of 65, 70, you start regretting. And loss and regret is another phase, believe it or not, in the heroic journey. How do you deal with that? So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, most definitely. So how do people find their purpose? How does especially a man who considers himself a warrior find his purpose?
Purpose, okay, it again has to fall within the categories of life that I mentioned, which is relationship purpose, your fitness and health purpose, your mental fitness and physical fitness purpose, your prosperity purpose, and the philosophy of life purpose. All right? Each one of them. So, for example, on a relationship, it's black and white. Don't start making it esoteric. You have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your wife. You have to take care of your children, your partner, whatever it is. You have to be there for each other. That's the purpose. All right? You don't abandon people. That's the warrior. Doesn't matter what happens, you don't abandon. You fall down, the ancient time, the horse which depends on you, that loves you, stands next to your body, even if you have been wounded in battle. So you don't give up. So that's the purpose. Very practical. When it comes to financial, your purpose is that. You have to put the money. It's not greed. There's nothing wrong with money. Man, you can make as much money as you want, but don't get lost in the emotion of the money. Okay? Be always in control of it. And as when you are there, you're managing it. Again, you're the warrior. Your money is a tool. You're not becoming the slave to the tool. Otherwise, it's called toolishness. You're losing it. So when it comes to, I think where you're getting at is the personal purpose. Each person has to, there is a part in yogic and philosophy and warriors and every culture. Let me just take the Indian version of it because it's a cross culture. In India, for example, they call it vichara, which is self-reflection. As you do that, which is, by the way, it's become kind of a fancy word right now for business people to do self-reflection, which they don't. But a lot of our older generation, really top people, even Albert Einstein, used to go for walks with their, colleagues, smoking a pipe. Yes, it was unhealthy, but they would be talking and self-reflecting. We don't do this anymore. Self-reflection is one that shows you what drove you as a child. What were your interests as a child? There is always a part of you as a child that never changes. Okay, that's one driving force for purpose. Don't ignore that. The other one is your dreams. Of course, the dreams has to be, people say follow your passion. It's not as simple as that in the warrior studies. They even talk about that. Passions are important, but it has to be really supported by data. So is it practical? And I mean, but I'm not talking about from a financial point of view. Is it just a practical dream, or are you just dreaming nonsense? So you put different components. So Chris, the way you find your purpose, and we're obviously not going to a session of finding a purpose today. That's not a workshop. The way you find the purpose is different components have to be looked into, responded, answers found. And when you put all those things like a puzzle together, you find your purpose. And how do you know you find your purpose? You're going to get out of bed in the morning like a jackrabbit. I don't care how old you are, because you're on fire.
Find your purpose. It's very important in life. Excuse me. Tell us about your history. How did you grow up? What were some of your influences? All that good stuff.
I grew up in, Iran when I was up to 11 years old. I come from a very privileged family back there, but I, left Iran at the age of 11. I went to Switzerland, and I've never gone back since. And I grew up in Europe, and then I came to the United States. I've been here for 45 years. And my whole, obviously I was very influenced by my father. My father was, a doctor, a professor, and very much an academician. But really my major influence were the great thinkers of the world. Since childhood, I started reading books. I mean, I am not trying to exaggerate here, but the reality is that one day I sat down about 10 years ago and I counted, I read more than 7,000 books.
Wow.
And, I just, since the age of 11. And, I was reading Aristotle when I was 14. So I started reading all these things, trying to figure out, I was an extremely curious person, trying to figure out what is really going on. So the great minds of the world, and then the great minds of the world were not enough for me. I had to actually go meet them. So I went to India. I went to around the world. I traveled and tried to find out who are these great thinkers, who are these people. And of course, when I started working with Apple, I had to do massive research to be able to help the senior executives back there and also the academics. And so there is not one thing that influenced me. It was just a whole, just together, aggregate of so many different things that when I look back after 60 something years, that, made me think the way I'm thinking right now.
And you invented pepper spray?
Yes, that's kind of interesting thing too. Years ago, my wife and I were in France. I haven't mentioned this anywhere, but I'll tell you this today. Exclusive for you, Chris. I was in a street coming out of a bank, and we went to a small luggage store, and lo and behold, in this very little luggage store, somebody had followed my wife, who had taken money out of the bank, and attacked her with a knife. So I had to fight him. Mm-hmm. And that made me think about the fact that if I'm not there, how is she going to defend herself? Yeah. So I come to the United States, and I put all of my, skills into practice, spending hours and hours at National Library of Medicine in Bethesda, Maryland. Mm-hmm. And eventually I became an advisor and started working directly with FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And the concept came from me actually from the samurai, which is called Mitsubishi. It's powder they used to put inside a little box of pepper, and they used to blow it at the opponent's face when they were in a really close encounter and they could not draw the sword. So I made that by bringing scientists, researchers, all of these together, and I was guiding everybody. Not from a business point of view, from the vision point of view. And we developed a very high level. Let's take, for example, how you take aspirin from a bark of a tree and you make it into aspirin. The same way we took really the ingredients of chili peppers and made it into a process that is safe, effective, and sprayed. Now, sprays of spray of different things like mace and all that existed at that time in those early days. Pepper spray existed as a dog repellent, but they're very weak. They would freeze in cold weather, all sorts of things. So we made it into a reliable weapon-grade product. I had all the patents. And it was just through my effort and my company's effort that I wrote all the manuals for law enforcement. I trained at the initial time 4,000 top trainers of law enforcement agencies across the country and became a standard issue for everybody. And our own little company became a pretty big company. I went to 47 different countries around the world. And that's why you see pepper spray on everybody's hand and belt in police officers. Wow. And then, of course, the civilian market came out of that. And people started using that. So that was just another chapter of my life in that way.
So what made you finally, you mentioned you work with Apple executives. What did you do in your work with Apple? I mean, at least, just a general overview, I guess. I
mean, I brought, the whole project, which was called Create, Lead, Achieve, to them, which basically I brought the leadership, the creative thinking and strategy, innovation, and all these different things to them based on the Warrior program that I have today. People don't realize the strategy comes from Warriors. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, the most creative approach to combat, to challenge, and all that came from the Warriors. You see that across China. Sun Tzu has The Art of War, many of them in his book, and there's so many great books that many of them are not even translated. So I brought all of that to them, and for many, many longer than decades, this became a standard issue for development of top executives back there.
Wow, that's pretty darn cool. Yeah. On your website, tell us some of the offerings that you offer people. What do you offer in terms of, I know we need to get a plug-in for your podcasting and some of the advising you do. Tell us about that. Let
me just say a little about the process of the Warrior, the giants, enlightened giants, like we call them, the enlightened warriors. It's really, the way they did it is that they went through not what steps and phases, but what they call gates. Mm-hmm. And these gates, the reason is gates, because it's like you enter into another cave, to another environment. And each one of these were another space, was another paradigm shift. I'm coming to your question in a second, because I need to preface it with this. Mm-hmm. So what they did is that they created a process in which a person takes the heroic journey going forward, and it's through these 17 gates. Mm-hmm. It actually, the first one starts with purpose and meaning. Mm-hmm. So you don't have that, you don't have any drive to do anything. Mm-hmm. Then it's about assumptions and beliefs. Then they go deep into perception and consciousness. Consciousness has become a very interesting word. Everybody's using it, but guess what? The concept of chit shakti or chit actually comes from the warriors from ancient time in the yogic tradition. Oh, wow. So all the rishis were just the top warriors of the ancient time, who were yogis, who were the founders of yogas, and all of them actually introduced the concept of consciousness. Oh, wow. In fact, the most profound study of consciousness is done by them. And is, but the doctrines and texts are not available to common people. They don't go after them and they start studying it. Then came the concept of self-protection. You have to self-protect, not just because you want to fight in the streets. They were not for fighting. They were not violent people. You never start a war. They were enlightened warriors. When I say samurai, for example, let me just preface this. We're not talking about, and I want to be point blank English. I'm going to say it as it is. We're not talking about the drunken samurai violent who's just drinking sake all the time. We're talking about the enlightened samurais who really made massive changes. So when we talk about warriors, that's what we're talking about. So they started, the whole concept of fitness of the body of mind, both agility, mentally or physically, speed, mentally or physically, endurance, physically or physically. So the whole concept of vitality was another gate. Then, listen, something we all live with, which is horrible. But how do you deal? I brought PTSD before. How do you deal with stress? I'm not talking about shallow sitting down and breathing and just thinking about good pictures. How do you really deal with stress? When you're in battle, war is happening. All right. How do you deal with anxiety? How do you deal with fears? How did they deal with it? They have a process. They did that. Then, believe it or not, they talk about self-sabotage, something that brings the greatest people down, which is addiction. How did they do it? And we're not talking about, detoxing here. How did they deal with the concept of addiction and mental issues that is just like a glue? You get attached to something and you can't let go. And it brings everybody down. It doesn't have to be substance abuse. I mean, it could be bad habits. It could be things that doesn't let you grow, doesn't let you to go in this journey. It's like they give examples in the mythologies. At thorns is attached to your legs and you can't walk.
No, really?
All right. So how do you move that out? So it's all there.
Yeah.
We all have to overcome difficult challenges. How do they do that? So that was another gate. Creative strategies. We talked about Apple. So how do they come up with strategies? Because you need strategy for prosperity. You need strategy in your relationship. You need strategy in life. How did they come up with that? They have 36 strategies, but they really, really profound strategies. Prosperity, we talked about that before. What was the concept? We're not talking about how to, invest in stock market. There is a generic format for prosperity that they apply to everything. And one of the interesting things with it is that it starts with your mind. I'm not talking about manifestation and money and this, that, the other, you see. Really practically, how do you think about prosperity? What is your philosophy of it? What do you think about being lucky? Do you feel like you're undeserving? They work on you to make sure that you get to a point that you become a winner. You become an achiever. And of course, finally, it's the rise of giant leaders. So you asked the question, and let me go back to that. So what I did is that we're trying now to put this entire 17 gates on riseofgiants.com and on the Rise of Giant podcast so that people can get into it, can enjoy it, can learn from it. And it's free of charge. We're not doing anything with that. We're just putting it out there for people to look into it and start the conversation, start the questions and all of that. And we're building each one of these gates really extensively as we're going forward. So people, those who are interested into it, they can really deeply go into it and make it part of their life. So that's what I'm doing at this time, basically putting the podcast out, making the Rise of Giants available, make myself available when people have questions and things like that. And they can all reach me through the riseofgiants.com. So that's what I'm doing really in answer to your questions.
Awesome sauce. Excuse me. So give us the .coms as we go out. Tell people how they can reach out to you, how they can onboard with you, etc., etc.
Is Rise of Giants with an S.com. Again, riseofgiants.com. And, it would be great if you can go in there and sign up. It's for free. There's no catch. There's no free trial, nothing. It's just free. Just go in there, sign up, and we don't use your email so that we can be in communication with you. So when new things comes up, you'll be the first one to know. So that's one of the things you could do. The other one is definitely check out our Rise of Giants. The podcast is on every platform. And, and thanks to you, more people are going to be able to hear about it. And so that they can, just immerse themselves. I truly believe that we are at the time, and I don't mean this politically or anything like that, because that's all people think about today. We are at the point in society and in civilization that we really need some of substance here. Substance, not just for the soul, for the mind, body, soul, relationships, life, all of these things, prosperity, work, business. And I want to say this to you, Chris, and I'm saying this and I'm looking at everybody out there. This is the most powerful transformation I have seen about reinventing life and work. And believe me, I have left no stone unturned. I've looked at everything. It's truly a powerful thing. It's been acid tested. It's been battle tested for ages.
Yeah. Hundreds of years, thousands, eons of time, you could probably say. So it's been wonderful having you on the show, insightful. More people need to get on their purpose, find their hero's journey, their warrior's journey. Men are struggling right now. They're not going to college. They're not starting families. And there's a lot that goes into that. It's not men's fault as much as you would think it would be. And they need to find their purpose again. They need to do their hero's journey. They need to do some of the things that you're talking about. Too many of this generation has been raised in emotionalism and doesn't have the masculine mentality to do the hero's journey and find their purpose. And that's what a lot of men need right now. Anyway, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, Kamran.
I thank you so much, Chris, for your time, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you, and thanks for audience for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. And that should have us out.